we might need to alter the name because I think we're starting to get to like cult films that aren't really necessarily obscure, but hey, whatever. But
Let's pretend like it's
I
obscure
guess
for
the
normal
but the
people.
rule should be if we consider it obscure or not. There we go. Aha. Am I right?
Doing
I don't see why it wouldn't be. It's our show.
Is the Real Bad News Cast. We're doing Obscursome.
Six complete strangers of widely varying personality characteristics are involuntarily placed in an endless maze containing deadly traps.
Does anybody remember how they got here?
Why would they throw innocent people in here? Are we being punished?
There's a way in here, so there's gotta be a way out.
Do you think they'd go to all the trouble to build this thing if we could just walk out?
Take a good long look around. Cause I got a feeling it's looking at us.
We have about 3 days without food and water before we're too weak to move.
I just want to wake up.
Looks no room down there, and something almost cut my head off.
Motion detectors integrated into the walls. Tough to spot.
You're not getting out of here.
Yes, we are!
There is no way out of here!
We need to get around the trap.
They're identified by crime numbers.
Figure it out.
I can't!
I'm not dying in a rat maze!
Cube, directed by Vincencio? I can't. Natali? Yeah, sure. I butchered that probably. A movie that came out in 1997. A movie that maybe Saw got some inspiration from. At least the traps. Maybe, kind of, sort of.
Oh, this is definitely Saw inspired.
I am Rage Killer. I'm here with Wolfman Cottonards and General Utz. What did you think of Cube?
Because I exactly remembered it when I saw it when it came out in, like, I think it was 99, 2000. I haven't seen it since I watched it the first time, so rewatching it again was pretty pleasant. Definitely, well, when I first saw it, and I still thought it was really good today. Quite well.
Lots?
Cube is a great example of a classic late-night cable science fiction film. It's got a very low budget, but it has a very high concept and a very highly technical story. It's a film that relies upon both the set and the actors more than anything else. There's not a lot of special effects in this film. What effects there are still hold up fairly well, but it really comes down to the actors interacting amongst themselves and acting off of the set. This is a film that is much more cerebral than your average late-night cable fare. It's a lot of psychological stuff going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of... well, when I say behind the scenes, I don't mean behind the scenes in real life. I mean behind the scenes with the characters and what's going on in their own minds. The traps really are used very sparingly. This is not some sort of gore fest where people get their heads cut off every 5 seconds. The film sets up the traps, shows how dangerous they are, but then really scales back a lot of the violence. And it's just more about how the characters react to what's going on. And the one thing I really liked about this film more than anything else is how it plays with your expectations. The person you might think is the hero might not necessarily be the hero. The guy who acts like an asshole might not actually be the villain. You just have to pay attention to what they do and how they act. One thing that I really also liked about this film, and I didn't know at the time when I first saw it, that this guy would actually become as big as he did, but the guy who plays Rodney McKay in Stargate is one of the characters in the film. Does a pretty good job, actually. So overall, I gotta say, Cube has held up quite well, and you know, it's not a matter of it holding up. It's still just a good film in general.
Also, one of the actors who played RoboCable in the made-for-cable RoboCop movie thing, Prime Directives, was also. At least that's the only other thing I remember the guy from. So, overall, I think we'd all recommend this movie. Right? Am I right?
I should certainly think so.
Okay.
Absolutely agree.
Before we go into spoilers, I think some of the trivia is interesting. Yeah, they shot the film in 20 days. And yeah, it was basically one set, and they just changed the colors and the camera angles and whatnot. The characters are named after prisons. They also reflect the prisons themselves. Example, Kazan, that mentally challenged character in Russia, was a prison for the mentally ill. Oh my God, I'm gonna butcher these names. Rennes, R-E-N-N-E-S, Rennes, I don't know. The Mentor is a French jail. This pioneered many would say his prison policies. Quentin, the detective, is known for his brutality. Holloway was a woman's prison in England, and Alderson is a prison where isolation is a common punishment. So, yeah, that's
I don't want to be
interesting.
that guy, but when you mentioned Quentin, you forgot to speak of what prison he was named after.
Ooh, it doesn't say, huh? I'm only looking.
San Quentin.
California.
Oh yeah, oh my God!
Dun, 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 dun.
Wow, over my head.
That was not a doe. That was a ball.
uh, and
Does
Leavenworth.
not say bow. He says go.
Let's see. The majority of film was filmed handheld. The special effects company Core did the digital effects for free. So,
Well, that's always friendly.
yeah, because it was filmed in
Done for free.
yeah, because it was filmed in Toronto. So, to show their support, of course, there's very few digital scenes in the movie. In fact,
The digital thing that I could really notice was the face and all thing.
right. For that, we shall get into spoilers.
You would see on a Honda.
It's gonna be interesting doing a rundown of this film, considering. But I guess we can do it. So yeah, the film opens up with the first character, pretty much, or we pretty much get the close of the eyeball, and then we're introduced some bald dude who ends up getting chopped into small little cubes.
You know what that reminded me of? It kind of made me think of Hellraiser, the intro when Frank was sitting there messing with the cube, ironically.
So I meant
You know?
configuration.
Yeah.
You know, but it kind of reminded me of that. You know, the way it was shot. So I'd say that there could have been a little bit of inspiration there. And then, funny enough, that's exactly what happened to the one guy in the first Resident Evil movie.
Yep, that's Paul W.S. Anderson paid homage to that scene.
They do like
Or
Cuban
ripped off,
people in a lot of
whatever.
these. They do.
The silly laser room that made no sense really, except it was. If you turn your brain off, it's kind of fun.
I still thought that was pretty stupid.
It's just a laser that goes through, and then eventually it thinks, "Oh wait, I can just make a bunch of lasers." Why didn't you do that in the first place?
That laser room makes about as much sense as the size of Mila Jovovich's nipples.
Yeah, very, very small. But the film's basic plot is just that of a survival plot. They got to keep figuring out, how to actually not trigger the traps. The characters are introduced one by one, and the first kill or the first death is rather well. The first death is established, I think, like 10 minutes in. It's really seriously telegraphed because one of the characters he's broken out of every prison in the world, which is why the second he opens up the room, he gets killed immediately. Now, one of the things they immediately figure out is if they throw a boot into a room, they can, trigger a trap, and if they throw a boot in there, they know not to go in there. And ultimately, after I think it was Quentin was the guy that escaped from every prison in the world dies. They then get kind of nervous, as you would expect. They eventually figure out that if they use mathematics, they can read these little numbers that are printed on the doors. And of course, they just so happen to have a character who is a math wizard. It's the typical, brunette chick who introduces herself being, "I'm a nobody. I'm just a student who happens to be super intelligent with math and can do high level calculations on their head on the fly." So yeah, not really nothing. The characters are actually fairly basic archetypes. The leader character is a black cop, and you think he could be the hero, but he also shows that he's a bit rough around the edges. And of course, there's the sympathetic female doctor character. Then there, of course, is not Rodney McKay. and he's just kind of an asshole. You don't actually get introduced to the previously mentioned Kazan until I think halfway into the film, and he, of course, will end up playing an important role.
It is kind of hard to like do a plot synopsis of this movie considering what it is.
Basically, the movie, it was Saw before it was Saw. It has a lot of Kafka-esque qualities, and I mean, it's definitely been one of those movies where people either love it or people hate it. There's really like no in between about it. Personally, I loved it because it was definitely a very industrial type of film. You know, it had you could definitely tell that it was low budget, but it had a lot of heart in it. I think the thing that made this movie stand out the most for me, though, was just the simplicity of it. I mean, yeah, you could tell that they were using the same room and they were just changing the lights depending on it. But the whole thing is the whole basis of the movie to me was to just show how easy it is for society to crumble.
Hmm.
But
Right.
you've got I Quentin. I know the cop's last name is my last name. That's how I was able to remember him.
He
But
said
I
he
mean,
was a
you would
cop,
figure
but he could have been. I don't know, because he definitely had another side to him.
that also there's a point behind that too. Because I mean, once again, it's very Kafka-esque, and to show you how society is like so fragile. Is the cop you would think is the one that has all of his shit together. He's the one. All right, everybody, listen to me. We're gonna try to figure this out. Blah 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 blah. You know, and
Right.
then he's trying to like make sexual advances on the one girl, and then he's leaving the other guy to die, and then he turns out to be a fucking lunatic. You know, and I mean, obviously the message is supposed to be sent saying, hey, just because they're a police officer doesn't mean they don't have a couple screws loose. Once again, it's whole theory that when you're put into a stressful situation like this, when extinguished at any moment, are you willing to sacrifice other people to get ahead so that you can have maybe like 10 more seconds on Earth, sort of thing? So it's definitely a very thought provoking film, and you can't really give it a plot synopsis. It's something that you absolutely have to go see. So once again, you can decide whether you love it or you hate it.
Right.
You definitely need to watch. It's one of those things you got to watch at least once in your lifetime type of movies. That well done, budget, and in that time frame.
I think the film also is trying to show that humanity was its own worst enemy. Uh, Whenever they work together, that's their best chance for survival. But every time they start engaging in infighting and things of that nature, that's when people start to die. And so I think it shows that while definitely the traps of the cube are dangerous, they themselves are the most dangerous because uh, basically, as we go through the film, they figure out more and more aspects of the cube. In fact, they even find an exit, a potential exit from the cube. Because, as it would turn out, the Rodney McKay character just so happened to design the shell of the cube. And this is where the film gets a little silly. Uh, the cube is absolutely gargantuan, like it's like 100 stories and it's buried underground. I'm like, yeah, do you realize how much that would cost? How would you construct such a thing? But
Well,
ultimately,
well, they never.
Obviously, this was a government thing, you know.
Well, they never. In the first film, it's definitely a mystery. I mean, they hint at aliens and other things of that nature. You don't get a clear answer of who made this thing.
I don't know if the government would actually have the black funds necessary to make something that big. I mean, that's just
Well,
like it's
they
You're
did
not
make.
spending $10,000 on a nail and $20,000 on a hammer.
uh, well, they do hint a little bit more with the two sequels they made, but it's still not clear cut. Like,
Myself.
like in a Hypercube, there was a military aspect because they had to retrieve something, and then in Cube Zero, which is a prequel, they showed that there were people that were hired to operate the cube, but they don't even know who the higher ups are. So there's still kind of a mystery of what exactly the cube is.
I always felt that it was one of those government type of things, and it's like they built it, and then I mean, that never gets answered throughout this film was why are we here? And why are these characters all thrown in here? And it's like I felt that it was something where they just grab people off the street and throw them in there just to put them in there. I mean, it's like, well, we built the goddamn thing, we might as well use it.
My thought was aliens. I mean, there's no implicate. We don't know where it is. We don't know where it could be. So it wouldn't make any sense if the government made it, because once again, that's just something the size of a super carrier. I mean, just the sheer amount of steel alone would be very expensive. But if it was aliens, then yeah, that'd make a degree of sense, and it also have a good motivation of what do humans do, how do they tick, and things of that nature. When we finally get to the end of the film, they figure out that they've been looking at the numbers wrong, and it just so happens that they find Kazan, who is, of course, another math wizard despite having autism. I've actually spoken to someone who knows a good deal about autism, and apparently it's a realistic depiction of certain autistic symptoms. But of course, he has the magic autism of being able to do math really, really well.
Can I interject really, really quick there? I can tell you firsthand, I actually have autism in my family, and I've worked with the Special Olympics like for years. It is a pretty accurate depiction, and it's not magic. The term for it is a savant, and it's basically where autism typically loses one thing, they gain something, not even double fold. It's kind of like triple fold. Like my little brother, very high functioning autism case, and one of his like things is like he's got this amazing ability to be able to like remember shit. Like he could look at like fucking license plates numbers from a mile away, and he could memorize that shit like 30 years later. It's so the people in that typical people with that typical what's the word I'm looking for? I can't really find the right fucking word for it. People with autism typically are very, very, very good with numbers, though. So it does make sense.
Being purgatory too. Technically, they could all be in hell or some kind of like in between place too. Because at the end, the main character does see a white light.
I think it's an example of a film that got more popular than I think any of the people working on it thought it was going to, and that's why it got those
Oh,
really,
yeah.
really crappy sequels.
Yeah, you could tell that they were not planning on making more than this to get it. It was like a fucking film project, and then uh, people like this.
Yeah, it's like a lot of those really crappy franchises that start out with a really good first movie. Pretty much every horror franchise is terrible because the first movie is the only good one because that's the only one that has any talent behind it.
I like the two sequels.
You could definitely tell that they did not plan on making another one.
No.
And I mean that, like Lot said, that's typically a case with most horror movies. Is they don't plan on doing more. Perfect example why Friday the 13th is so fucked up is they did not plan on making any more. The first 4 or 5
Much
times.
less a sequel per year.
It didn't become a big deal until after part 5. Because I mean, part 1 they figured it was going to be a one and done cash in. They made their money back and then a lot, and then they made part 2. And then they figured, okay, that'll be the end of it. We're giving them their sequel, and then whoa, this sold really, really well. I guess we're gonna do a part 3. And then part 3, did really, really well. It was like, all right, look, we got to end this, so we're gonna end it at part 4. It's just the whole point being is the first 4 movies they did not plan on making any more, and this is how the timelines and how the continuity and even the quality of the scripts gets all screwed up because they put everything basket.
Right. But
There's
yeah,
there's
well,
no way in hell, no way in hell that these sequels, I've never seen them, but there's no way in hell that they will ever match up to the original.
yeah, I don't know. I have a soft spot for Hypercube, but and that one's more. I think only because that one's in the sequel as a trans-dimensional cube, so they deal with alternate realities and time travel and stuff, and eventually it starts becoming unstable, and as the film goes on more and more. I'd say Q2 is worth watching. There's a lot of cool ideas in it. Is it as good as the first? No, but it's got some really neat ideas. Like I don't want
When
to
you start adding,
like I don't want to spoil it, but there is a serial killer, and there is a time travel aspect of it, and it's kind of creative what they do with that.
oh, you said there is a serial killer, and I'm like, yeah, like in Predators. Like this isn't Back to the Future, motherfucker.
No, there's a
I mean,
moment.
notice,
I don't want to spoil it, but
well, I think one thing you notice is though is you have a very simple first film that just is very straightforward in what it does.
yeah,
But
I think the reason why Cube works is because you can get with people and come up with your own theories of. I like the fact that it doesn't answer everything. Like I said earlier, it could be they could all be in purgatory, and the white light could represent heaven or hell or something. Who knows?
Oh, good one, mate.
of course,
That's
then
a
again,
good one.
there's a problem. This has nothing to do with really Cube, but bringing up like they don't tell you everything that can be good or bad. This is just a general movie discussion that kind of annoys me in some instances. It's where when they don't explain something and it's like it makes what you just saw kind of pointless. There's a show I watched just recently. I won't say what it is because it was actually a good show right up until the end. But it's where literally nothing was explained, and it really needed to be because that was kind of a point. It
That
was the
Hill
point of
House.
this. I will neither confirm nor deny. I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one. But
I'm in
you
the
know, it's
same
like
boat as you.
okay. I mean, whatever could you be talking about?
Well, I
I
mean,
know that.
Q.
Absolutely agree with
I
you.
think Cube is a movie that more or less purpose is to create a sense, of dread and being terrified of if they're gonna survive or not, the death traps, that kind of stuff. More
Yeah.
so than having everything explained.
Well, see, no, go on.
That's all.
That definitely plays off of. It depends on the person watching it. Um, you know that one movie that Ryan Reynolds did where he was trapped in the coffin?
Yeah.
Buried.
Yeah, I think that's what it was called, buried or something. That
Scared the fuck out of me.
that was a gimmick for a while with Hollywood, because they also did another movie called Frozen. I think it's a Disney movie, and it was literally about people who just got stuck on a ski lift, and then they did a buried, and they did like another one. But yeah,
Buried scared the shit out of me, and the reason why is because I'm a really, really, really bad claustrophobic,
oh
and thinking about that, like being trapped in a situation like that, like fuck the ending. The ending was sad enough, they went to the wrong box and all that, but about being in a situation like that terrifies me. So I mean, if you're a claustrophobic person, this movie will definitely play on your.
yeah,
I would say that.
I'd have to say Frozen was worse because not only are you stuck in one spot, you're slowly freezing to death.
I would think so, potentially.
And then there was another one called. There's one where they're just stuck in the ocean and the sharks. Oh, I forgot what the hell's the name of it. I can't remember. Diving or something happened where they literally got stuck in the middle of the ocean. The entire movie is just that. And
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about, but
oh, God, oh man, the name of it's like at the edge of my brain.
no, it's actually I know.
It was open water.
Yeah, that's the one. I recognize the name now.
Like I said, there was a time when Hollywood kept making these movies where it would be a person either stuck in the water, stuck on a ski lift, stuck in a box, through the entire thing.
Stuck in a fridge.
It's Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
Oh, don't remind me of
Nuke
that.
the Coke.
But all that aside, I think this is one of those films that you don't actually really need to even know what or why anything is going on because you're more interested in just seeing how the characters are going to react to the next potential trap or react to what one of them is going to do. And with that in mind, not everything needs an explanation, but well, okay. With a film like this, it's more of a survival film than anything else. So you don't necessarily need to know where the cube is, how they got there, or anything like that. Now, some shows definitely do need an explanation.
Well,
Just keeping the
it's sort of,
audience guessing.
you could think of it like an elongated episode of Twilight Zone or something.
You know what? You brought up a really good point because I remember there was a Twilight Zone episode that was exactly like this. I don't remember the name of it, but I used to watch Twilight Zone all the time as a kid. And there was this one episode that was pretty much exactly like this movie.
I think I know which one you're talking about. I think it's the one where it's the people that are stuck in that room. Although I could spoil the ending, but I'm not going
Oh, actually, funny enough, at least if Wikipedia is true or not, they're saying that the episode was 5 characters in search of an exit, which is reportedly the inspiration for this film. So, interesting.
to. Of course, it does have a.
It was so ahead of its time.
Yeah, I know what episode you're talking about. I know the twist in it too.
What's a twist? I'm actually pretty happy that it wasn't an annoying twist in Cube. The film itself will probably keep you guessing throughout it. Not too much is telegraphed, which is really quite surprising. Now, since we're of course in the spoiler bit, the vast majority of characters aren't even killed by the traps. And that's a rather interesting thing. The person it's actually a person that killed a whole bunch of people.
The worst one is the acid in the face.
But that's the very first
right
one.
In the beginning.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't even seem like that big of a deal because that's just the intro kill, and that's like, it's so telegraphed. It's like, come on, just kill him already.
I know, but the effects were done so well on the melting. We're just like, oh God, no.
Well, yeah, that was pretty good, but after that, the film really isn't particularly violent. What's particularly sad, is the fact that all the characters that you kind of come to love end up being killed off by the cop character because he's gone completely mad and he stabs the attractive brunette chick in the back, literally.
And Lotz's heart was broke.
Yes. And the
well, don't forget, he drops the nurse out the frickin' cube thing.
Yeah, the cube window. The only one who makes out alive is Kazan, and we don't really see where he goes, so we do not know if he made it home or not. I actually like that particularly ambiguous ending simply because it keeps you guessing. Like, what did he come out on an alien planet? Did he come out in the desert? We don't know, and I think it works quite well in that regard.
I can make a reference to the Predator and say he came out on the Predator homeworld, and then they took his spine.
Of course, he wouldn't because he's not really a warrior. He's a math savant. So why would they have any desire? I
was gonna give spoilers to the Predator, but nah.
I got it. Then they'd play a lot of Minecraft and Sonic the Hedgehog.
Minecraft.
Dedicated RAM.
Do you know about that spoiler Wolfman on the Predator? I was like, I could always spoil what we're talking about so you know what we're talking about, but if you want to wait.
Shit to me, like spoilers don't bother me.
Oh, well, in the Predator, no joke, they say that autism is like the next form of evolution, and that the predators are collecting spinal fluid to hibernization themselves, and they essentially want autism spinal fluid to evolve themselves.
Get out of here with that shit.
Yeah, from the writer of Monster Squad and Night of the Creeps.
I still like that film. I don't care what anybody says. I stand by my review of that film, by the way. Oh, yes. I like Venom 2, goddammit. And Venom 1. Even though Venom 2 hasn't been released yet.
You know what? I'm more than willing to believe that fucking Predators is a really good movie. Or maybe it was Fred Decker. Who knows?
Or Shane Black. I don't know.
Someone has to do a little bit of nutty shit once in a while. And a fluid to... What?
Well, the way I see it, it's I think they were going for a more legitimate reason for collecting spines other than just trophies. Yeah, I think it works. I liked it. I don't care.
Back to Cube, should we talk about the death traps in general?
The fact is, there weren't that many in the film. That's the thing.
I thought the razor wire one was a pretty cool scene. Like, don't
Yeah, but
move, and then they slowly show it, and then he jumps out just in time. Or the sound room with the spikes.
yeah, that,
Death traps you didn't see too much of, but it was just the sheer fact that they were there and that they were a constant presence.
They did a good job building
So
tension during those scenes.
they didn't overuse it to the point where it just became boring. It's kind of like that's one of the biggest problems with any horror sequel. You know, like with Friday the 13th, Halloween, and all the rest.
Right.
Is like in the first film they killed off like a person, you know, and then in the next film they're just cutting people left and right. With Cube, it was like there was like maybe what 3 traps in the entire film, and so it knew how to pace itself very well.
I almost feel like we've become like uninspired to talk about Cube. It's like Cube, it's good, go see it. It's like you know, it's like a hard movie to like talk about. It's like, yeah, there's these people, and then there's like sabotaging, and then one by one, some people get murdered, and they figure it out. You know, but then ultimately they figure out if they would have stayed in the same room, it would have eventually cycled to the exit.
how did you get an Italian accent when you were describing that?
I don't know.
Boom over here, and then they go over there, and then they go boom into the trap, and then they climb into the cube, and then the cube they change the colors.
And they have to fight the Koopas. I don't know why, but Bowser showed up. Thankfully, Bowser did not.
From side to side.
Yeah. Well, there's no Cube video game, but the closest thing I could think of is Half Dead. Nothing to do with Half Life. It's actually like I think it's like $1 on Steam or whatever. And well, you can't go up or down, but you essentially go through different rooms. You can play co-op, and you know you gotta avoid death traps and stuff. Find the exit.
And it's surprisingly good. It's fairly well made, and it pretty much replicates the film Cube pretty well, actually.
I believe the sequel's also coming out, but yeah, like right now it's like $2.
Portal?
No, it's called Half Dead.
Oh, that game has gotten so much shit. Every time I see it, I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then I read the reviews, and it's just like,
I think people who complain about the game don't really get it because it's just, you know, you try to not trigger traps and that's it. I think they were expecting either more or something different. But I guess that's all there is to say about the old Cube. It's a cerebral horror film that definitely will keep you guessing as to what's going on as you watch it. Definitely, I wouldn't say that it's aged well. I would say it hasn't aged at all. I mean, the special effects have aged somewhat, but I think you'll be able to suspend your disbelief while watching it to the point where it really won't matter. It's kind of like Sonic 2. You know, Sonic 2 has aged a bit.
The only effect I thought aged was maybe the stop motion at the beginning, but it still looked awesome.
I should think so. I mean, you can if what you're watching is good enough, you can suspend your disbelief no matter what the effects really are.
It's been 20 years. They need to make like a new Cube movie. Yes.
No, they don't.
Oh.
there is
No,
a
they don't.
reboot they're working on.
No, they don't. No, I mean every time they reboot something, it's usually far, far worse, far more uninspired.
They can start them out in a new Cube, and they end up like halfway through the film going to the ruins of the old Cube. And it's like they can make it like half working and stuff. They can make it half working.
Stupid.
And like, oh.
Stupid. Oh my god, we're stuck in a new cube. No, you have a fucking cube. That's it.
You can call it Cubed.
Cube Square. Or how about call it, or you know what? Call it fucking Rubik's Cube for all I care. It
Cube, the next generation.
Cube 4. Because cubes have 4 sides and it's the 4th film.
Hee-haw, the next generation. It does not need a remake. It does not need a sequel. It does not need a remake where it's 20 years later and, you know, Kazan is returned from college.
It's
like, look, okay, you know, we'll close out the video talking about horror remakes. Horror remakes almost never work.
Hold on, before you go into a tirade, sir, I just wanted to give like one final thought on Cube. The best way that I can really sum up this movie is that, like Lot said, It has not aged. Thing. It's just as good as I remember when it first came out. If you had to, well, what is this movie like? Like, is it like what other movies is this like? Think of it like like Saw meets Event Horizon, and there's Cube.
If I were to describe
Yeah,
this film in one word, dread. Not to judge either. Just it's definitely
Remake, which was really really good.
it definitely gives you that feeling like you're stuck in some kind of hell.
Go on your rant.
And
Okay.
oh, I was gonna say the movie is a feeling,
No, go
man.
on.
It's a feeling. You need to experience the movie that is Cube. That's all I gotta say. Check it out. It should be on like every horror fan, sci-fi, like watch list.
But what you don't want to watch is, of course, the Cube remake. Why? Because remakes never work. Remakes never work.
They'll just
All
call
they
it
do,
Square.
all they do, no, horror remakes never work. Let me specify. Some remakes do work. The Thing I don't think really counts because that's a little different. Yeah, because everyone's gonna bring that up. It's like, oh, The Thing is good. Well, you know what? It's a completely different film to the original Thing from Another World. So I'm not. But that kind of does prove my point, though. It's like if you made like a remake of Cube, what do you think the remake would be like? It'd be a fucking triangle. You know, it'd be a square. You know, it's just square now.
Oh, my joke came true. Apparently, according to 2015, they were going to call the remake Cubed.
See,
I was just
I told
joking.
you. You know, it's like it would have nothing. I don't even know where to even start with what a Cube remake would likely be like. You know, it's like Cube.
I wouldn't care if they
God.
remade it or not. It'd just be no different than the sequels, to be honest.
I
It would
suppose.
be Octagon, and it would be like UFC fights and shit.
Okay, that might be hilarious, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's what if that would be the case though. It's like I guess the best way to point it out
Starring The Rock and Ronda Rousey.
the octagon. Step into the octagon. But that being said, you know, a lot of these movies really can't be remade all that well. You know, it's like sometimes you'll get an exception, like The Thing, before anyone tells me. But think about this though. Cube is a film that was kind of Cube is one of those movies that you can't go down a formula checklist like so many films do today. It was a film that was made by unique individuals, you know, more for the art than it was just for a bottom line. You know, it's the same way with a lot of classic films, you know, like Alien and Star Wars and things of that nature. This had a lot of passion put into it versus just, oh, it is Cube. People know that name, right? Let's just call it Cube Cube so it'll show up higher up on the Google search results. We are smart. We will have rooms and lots of traps. Let's put CG traps. They might have gravity traps because we're smart. All right, I'm done.
So,
Okay.
yeah, watch the original Cube. And, well, I'm not going to say the sequels because someday we might review them. And then we'll let you know. But for now, watch
There,
Cube.
there is one thing I did want to say though, with Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, The Fly?
See, now I was going to bring up these good remakes, but you know what? Name me other than Thing and Fly.
Other than Thing and Fly that were better than the original. Off the top of my head, I'd probably have to say.
Yeah, The Thing,
Have to
The
really dig.
Fly. I would say Night of the Living Dead is actually just as good as the original. In a way, it's like a choose your own
Tom
adventure
Savini,
thing. Yeah, that's what I meant.
directed one, not
Yeah.
not any of the other fuckers.
That's
That was-
what I meant.
That was definitely on par with the original.
Right.
Hills Have Eyes wasn't a terribly bad remake.
Yeah, that was really good. The first one, not the second one. Not the second one of either. The original sequel and the remake sequel both sucked, but the original and the remake were really good.
I really like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes.
Yeah, even though technically, like that canon sequel's been changed so many times. Like, isn't technically 3 a remake and 4 a remake? And
I don't know. I actually enjoyed the remake, and I actually liked the prequel too.
yeah, it wasn't bad.
Just gelled really decent. It was sure better than any of the other turds that flew up the pipe. Sequels that came out in the horror category. Well, let's see. We'll go down the big ones. Friday the 13th remake was kind of passable.
Yeah, it was.
compared to
It
the
was.
mon-
It was kind of. Yeah, it was decent. The only problem I had with it was, I felt the teenagers were caricatures of teenagers. If you know what I mean. It's
The
like
teenagers were awful. I wanted them to die. Nightmare on Elm Street, that was horrible. The guy looked
Mhm.
like a burnt sock.
they expected us to, so they're like Freddy's a pedo in this, and then they're like, if I listen to his funny one-liners, it's like ha 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 ha, ew.
Ew. The Halloween remake. Seriously, Rob Zombie, go fuck yourself.
At least that, yeah, but at least it tried to be different though. It wasn't an exact copy of the original, but it wasn't exactly what I
Great.
wanted.
If it was going to be different, then he was going to give us different character names in a different setting with a lot of different stuff.
Right.
Okay, that 45 minutes of the white trash household and subjecting like good actors. Ugh,
The Evil Dead remake I thought was really good.
the Evil Dead remake.
Hmm?
We're only coming out to this cabin so that you can quit doing drugs.
So yeah, just keep that in mind of how easily a Cube remake could go wrong.
Suck.
The 2004 Dawn of the Dead remake was really good, even though I don't consider it a remake. Just they both take place at the mall. That's about it.
It was kind of like, to me, the Dawn of the Dead remake was like they brought 28 Days Later to America.
I heard Piranha 2010 was good, but I haven't seen it. So
I haven't seen it either, but it does stand a lot at this point, though. So easy for a remake to go bad.
right, and I think if you put a lot of passion in it too, you can do a decent job.
There's not going to be passion behind it. Oh yeah, another thing I wanted to bring up: the Stepfather remake sucked.
Ugh.
Doing a remake of Cube, it would never work, and the reason why is because you had all the right elements. I think the correct term is lightning in a bottle.
They were,
Happened twice.
yeah. I don't know.
It does not happen twice.
Right.
This was a perfect storm of, okay, we have X amount of money, so we have to make this work this way. It's like, think of it this way, and this is what I always do when I produce videos too. Think of the doors opening in Resident Evil. Tension, and it's also to hide the loading screens.
Right.
And I mean, I guess the whole point behind me saying that is, it's just sometimes simplicity is more effective than
Well,
cover up things. Sometimes you can cover up things that would be a glaring thing that, if you had the right finances. If they put 100,000 into making this movie, it would not be the same, because no, you would not have that passion. You would not have the director and the story writer going, I really need to make this good. I got to make it. I got to make it. You got a director who's, like, we got to make this fucking work with X amount. People like that, when you're in a situation like that, you will work harder and you will work smarter.
So I guess we're done with the Cube.
A cube is a solid shape. 6 flat surfaces. Each surface is the shape of a square. It's a 3-dimensional shape.